Imagine a private company with its own army, its own forts, and the power to collect taxes from millions of people. It was not a country. It had no elected government. It began as a group of merchants looking for spices, textiles, and profit. But within 2 centuries, the East India Company had become one of the most powerful organizations in the world. This is the story of how a trading company rose to power, helped build the British Empire in India, and eventually lost everything. On the final day of the year 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a royal charter to a group of English merchants. The new East India Company received exclusive English trading rights across much of Asia. Its original mission was simple: buy valuable goods such as spices, silk, cotton, porcelain, and tea, then sell them in Europe for profit. India was already home to powerful kingdoms, wealthy cities, and highly developed trade networks. The company did not arrive as a conqueror. It arrived as a customer. Company representatives negotiated with local rulers and established trading centers in places such as Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. But trade in this period was dangerous. European companies competed against each other. Ships were attacked. Political alliances changed. Wars in Europe spread into Asia. To protect its warehouses and trading settlements, the company began constructing forts and recruiting soldiers. A business was slowly becoming a military power. The major turning point came in Bengal. Bengal was one of India's richest regions, known for agriculture, textiles, and international trade. In 1756, the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj ud Dowlah, captured the company's stronghold at Calcutta. After tensions over British military preparations, the company responded by sending forces led by Robert Clive. But Clive did not rely only on military strength. Company officials secretly negotiated with members of the Nawab's court, including his commander, Mir Jafar. They offered to make Mir Jafar the new Nawab if he refused to fully support Siraj during the coming battle. On the 23rd of June, 1757, the two armies met near the village of Plassey. Siraj's army was much larger, but much of it did not seriously participate in the fighting. The company won. Siraj was captured and killed, while Mir Jafar was installed as Nawab. The Battle of Plassey was not simply a military victory. It gave the East India Company enormous political influence over Bengal, one of the wealthiest provinces in India. Plassey opened the door, but the company's transformation was not yet complete. In 1764, company forces won another major victory at the Battle of Buxar. The following year, the Mughal emperor granted the company the Diwani, the right to collect revenue in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. This changed everything. The company was no longer earning money only by selling goods. It could now collect taxes from millions of people. The revenues of Bengal helped finance the company's army, administration, and future wars. A private corporation had effectively become a territorial government. Its shareholders remained in Britain, expecting profits. Its officials operated in India, collecting revenue and exercising political power. The interests of the people being governed were often placed behind the interests of the company and its investors. Over the following decades, the company expanded across the Indian subcontinent. It fought powerful opponents, including Mysore under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, the Maratha Confederacy, and several regional rulers. Sometimes the company conquered territory directly. Sometimes it signed treaties that placed Indian rulers under British influence. In other cases, it stationed troops inside allied kingdoms and demanded that local rulers pay for their maintenance. Failure to pay could lead to territory being taken. The company also benefited from divisions between competing kingdoms and political factions. It rarely succeeded through British strength alone. Its expansion depended heavily on Indian soldiers, Indian financiers, local allies, and existing rivalries. By the early 19th century, the East India Company controlled or influenced large parts of the subcontinent. A business created to purchase spices and textiles had become the foundation of an empire. The company's success created a serious problem. It was both a commercial corporation and a government. Its officials could influence rulers, collect taxes, and build private fortunes. Reports of corruption and mismanagement began reaching Britain. At the same time, the company faced financial difficulties and asked the British government for help. Parliament could no longer treat it like an ordinary private business. The Regulating Act of 1773 increased government control over the company. Further laws followed, including Pitt's India Act in 1784. Gradually, the British government gained greater influence over company affairs. The company also began losing its trading privileges. In 1813, it lost most of its monopoly over trade with India. In 1833, its remaining commercial activities ended. The East India Company was no longer mainly a trading business. It had become an administrative and military organization. By the middle of the 19th century, resentment against company rule had grown. Indian rulers had lost territories. Landowners and communities faced major economic and political changes. Many soldiers were unhappy with their pay, promotion opportunities, service conditions, and interference with established customs. In 1857, sections of the company's Bengal army rebelled. The uprising spread across parts of northern and central India. Indian soldiers deposed rulers, and local communities joined for different reasons. The conflict became extremely violent. The company, supported by British forces and Indian allies, eventually suppressed the rebellion. but its reputation and authority had been permanently damaged. The British government decided that a private company could no longer govern India. In 1858, the Government of India Act transferred the company's territories, administration, and armed forces to the British Crown. Direct British rule began. The East India Company still existed legally, but it no longer possessed the power that had made it extraordinary. In 1874, it was formally dissolved by an Act of Parliament. A company that began with a royal charter in 1600 had survived for more than 270 years. It had transformed from a trading organization into a military power, a tax collector, and a territorial government. Then the British state absorbed the empire it had helped create. The East India Company did not conquer large parts of India because it had an unbeatable army from the beginning. It succeeded by combining trade, finance, diplomacy, local alliances, and military force. It entered existing political struggles and used each victory to finance the next one. Its rise shows how economic influence can become political power, and how political power can become territorial control. But its collapse reveals another lesson. When an organization becomes too powerful, too unaccountable, and too important to fail, governments eventually intervene. The East India Company created enormous wealth for some, while leaving a deeply controversial legacy across the Indian subcontinent. It began with merchants searching for profit. It ended by changing the history of an entire region. This was the glory, greed, and ruin of the East India Company.